She said I never help, so I helped her disappear. The shampoo bottles were gone. That's what struck me first. Her usual row of colorful, overpriced hair products vanished. No note, no message, just a hollow shelf mocking me in the shower like I'd imagined her existence altogether. Then I noticed her phone charger was missing. The top drawer of the nightstand was empty. The toothpaste was uncapped like she'd squeezed it one last time and decided that was the final act of our marriage. She left while I was at the DMV. Not kidding. I had been standing in line for nearly 2 hours to renew my license. When I came home, I thought the quiet meant she was on a call. But the silence, it wasn't filled with life. It was dead. Then I heard the front door open again. For a second, my heart actually lifted. I thought, she forgot her keys. She came back to talk. She came back to me. But no. She just looked at me, really looked, the way someone stares at a stranger who accidentally sat at their table and said, "I'm leaving you, Kyle. You never helped me with anything." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound sad. She sounded like she was giving feedback on a delivery order that arrived cold. I said the only thing my brain could manage in the moment. "Do you want help packing?" She actually smirked. A little curve of the mouth like she'd waited for me to finally be useful. She didn't answer. Just walked past me with the grace of someone who had already deleted me emotionally 2 years ago. The front door closed. Again. And I stood there, holding a pack of expired car registration forms. At first, I didn't panic. I thought it was some dramatic bluff. A statement. A test. One of those, let's see if he chases me moments. But an hour passed. Then 3. Then I noticed her wedding ring wasn't on the bathroom counter. And her favorite hoodie, the one she never washed because it smelled like comfort, was gone too. Still, I waited. I cleaned the kitchen like an idiot. I folded laundry she'd never wear again. I refreshed her location like I had a right to know. Nothing. That night, I microwaved the leftover baked ziti. Hers too. I placed both plates on the table. I don't know why. Habit, I guess. Then I just stared at her empty chair. Midnight came. She didn't text. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A photo. From an unknown number. It was her. Sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Feet curled under her. Glass of wine in hand. Another hand was resting on her thigh. A man's hand. No message. No explanation. Just a photo like a punch in the face. I stared at it for 30 solid minutes. Trying to convince myself maybe it was old. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it wasn't her at all. But I recognized the chipped nail polish on her pinky. The same one she said she didn't have time to redo. Suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights. The sudden yoga retreats she never came back from sore. The time she said she needed space to find herself and came back smelling like cologne I didn't wear. The worst part? I didn't feel rage. Not then. I felt useless. Like she was right. I really didn't help her. Not the way he apparently did. But I also didn't know what she'd left behind. What I'd find 2 days later in the attic would flip this entire story upside down. And no one, not even she, was prepared for that. She said I never help, so I helped her disappear. I didn't sleep the night after the photo. I just sat on the couch like a ghost in my own house. I scrolled through our old shared albums. Trips to Maine. Thanksgiving with her parents. Our road trip where the car broke down outside Chattanooga and we laughed for hours waiting on a tow. At the time, I thought those moments were real. That we were building a life. But now I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a placeholder. A background character in a love story that only existed in my head. The following morning, I dragged myself out of bed and went through the motions like some half-functional shell of a man. I made coffee for 2 out of habit. I didn't pour hers. Just watched the mug sit there, steaming, untouched. That's when I noticed the stack of unopened envelopes on the kitchen table, mostly junk, but one caught my eye. No return address. Just my name, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a folded note and a Polaroid. The note read, "Since you like helping, maybe help yourself to the truth." The photo? Another shot of her. Same hotel room. This time she was standing in front of a mirror, back to the camera, wearing the shirt I gave her for our 5th anniversary. The one with K+B, EST 2011 embroidered on the sleeve. The hand was there again, only this time higher. Closer. Possessive. I dropped it. It fluttered to the floor like a final insult. Who sent it? Her? Him? Someone who knew. My head spun with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I didn't know what to do, so I did what I always did. Nothing. I cleaned the bathroom. I vacuumed the stairs. I watered her dead succulents like that would somehow make things make sense. And then I went upstairs, numb, to change the bedsheets she'd never sleep in again. That's when I heard it. A hollow clunk from the ceiling. The kind you only notice when the house is dead quiet. I froze. Then I heard it again. Not footsteps, but something shifting. Almost like a box sliding across beams. My heart started racing. I hadn't been in the attic in years. She always said it was too dusty, and I was always too lazy to care. But now I cared. I pulled down the ladder, heart pounding like I was about to discover a wild animal or worse. The air up there was thick with insulation dust, and the kind of silence that knows too much. I scanned around with a flashlight until I saw it, a gray plastic storage bin, oddly clean compared to everything else around it. I opened it, expecting Christmas decorations or childhood junk. What I found stopped my breath. Inside were neatly organized files. Dozens of them, labeled with dates and names I didn't recognize. And one envelope at the very top, with my name, again, written in that same strange handwriting. This one said, "You were never supposed to see this." Inside was a printed email thread. Between Brenna and someone named M. I don't want to share the full thing right now. It still makes me feel sick just thinking about it. But the gist was, they had been planning to move in together for months. She wasn't just leaving me. She was replacing me. She wrote things like, "He won't fight. He never does. It'll be clean." And she was right. I hadn't fought. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask her to stay. I just stood there, useless to the very end. But the final line of the last message hit me hardest. It wasn't written by her, it was from him. All it said was, "Make sure he never finds the camera." Camera? I stood up so fast I hit my head on the attic beam. My pulse was in my ears. I dug through the rest of the bin, and beneath a folded blanket, I found it. A small black object, taped under the lid of another box, a motion sensor camera. I brought it downstairs, plugged it into my laptop, and what I saw, I still haven't recovered from. She'd been recording me. Not just me. Us. Our fights. Our dinners. Private conversations. But it wasn't for memories. These were like case studies. Clips trimmed and labeled by date. She'd been building a narrative. Like she was preparing to prove I was unworthy, inattentive, maybe even unstable. One video was just me forgetting to take the trash out. Another showed her saying something like, "Can you just help for once?" Then walking away before I could even respond. They were edited. Cropped. Controlled. She was rewriting our marriage into a story she could justify leaving. Maybe even use in court. And I still don't know what she was planning to do with him. But I knew this wasn't just about love anymore. It wasn't even about cheating. Something else was going on. And I wasn't going to be the one who kept pretending I didn't see it. She said I never help, so I helped her disappear. I couldn't get the videos out of my head. I rewatched them, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand what kind of story she was trying to build. Each clip felt like a nail being driven into a version of me I barely recognized. She made it look like I was cold, distant, disconnected. But I wasn't. Not really. I just didn't perform the way she wanted me to. I didn't narrate my affection. I didn't grandstand. But I cared. I tried. There was one video where I walked into the living room and sat on the couch while she was doing dishes. She asked, "Can you help me for once?" And I nodded. But she turned the camera before I stood up. It cut off the part where I actually got up and started drying the plates. In her version, I was the lazy husband ignoring her struggle. I felt sick. How many of these moments had she staged? And why? Was this for divorce court? Social media? Some elaborate revenge fantasy? I couldn't sit with it. I couldn't just stew in my house full of ghosts and manipulated memories. So I did something I hadn't done since before we got married. I drove out to the lake. It was nearly 2 hours away, a place we used to go when we were dating, back when things were good, when she used to laugh with her whole face and not that tight-lipped smirk I eventually got used to. The road there was long and empty, and I hoped maybe some of the silence would feel different, less accusing. I sat on a bench overlooking the water, trying to breathe through everything. That's when I saw the couple. They were walking their dog, laughing. She leaned into him, and he looked down at her like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. For a moment, I felt happy for them. Then I saw the woman's profile more clearly. It wasn't Brenna, but it could have been. Same hair, same build, same coat. I swear to God, the one I bought for her during that weird cold snap in 2019. I stared like a madman, heart punching my ribs, until she turned toward me fully and I saw the difference. Different eyes, different voice, But that was the moment something snapped. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who jumps at shadows of his ex-wife and every stranger. The one who drives to empty lakes and rewatches old video files just to feel something. I told myself I was going to let it go. Leave the camera, the files, the notes, all of it. I'd box it up and donate her things. Clean start. Fresh page. All that therapy talk. That lasted less than 12 hours. Because when I got home, there was another envelope waiting. This time it was taped to my front door. No name. No stamp. Just for Kyle, written in red ink. Inside was a single USB drive. I nearly threw it away. I was tired of playing her games, or his games, or whoever was sending this garbage. But curiosity, paranoia, and self-destruction are a cocktail you can't resist once you've tasted it. I plugged it in. One video file. Labeled only. Watch this. I wish I hadn't. The video wasn't edited like the others. It was raw, uncut footage from the hallway camera, one I didn't even know existed. It showed her, Brenna, welcoming a man into our house. Not nervously. Not in a rush. Calm. Familiar. She kissed him. In the hallway. The same spot where I used to hang our keys. Then she led him upstairs. She laughed. He picked her up. They vanished from the frame. But what really gutted me wasn't that she brought another man into our home. It was that this video was from months ago. Before she ever complained. Before she accused me of not helping. While we were still sleeping in the same bed. While I was making her coffee every morning. While I was rubbing her shoulders on nights she claimed her clients were exhausting. It was never about me helping. It was never about the trash or the laundry or my quiet personality. She just needed an excuse. I sat on the floor of my living room, staring at the paused video. Her hand in his. Her smile not forced. Her comfort so natural. And me? I was the ghost. I was the clueless, docile placeholder who thought loyalty was enough. But here's where it gets stranger. That hallway camera? I didn't install it. So who did? She said I never help, so I helped her disappear. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours. That hallway footage looped endlessly in my mind. No matter how many times I blinked or tried to look away, I couldn't get rid of the image. Her walking him through our front door like it was a second home, like I never even existed in that space. But the thing I couldn't let go of, the thing that now haunted me even more than the betrayal, was the fact that I didn't set up that camera. We only had one home security cam, and it faced the driveway. I remember because I bought it during that neighborhood break-and scare 2 years ago. I never installed any cameras indoors. Brenna hated the idea. Said it felt paranoid. But this was different. It wasn't smart tech. It was old school. No Wi-Fi. No cloud storage. Just a motion-triggered sensor hooked to local memory. And whoever set it up wanted me to find this footage. That wasn't paranoia. That was calculated. I started searching the house. First methodically, then manically. Closets, drawers, utility boxes. I turned everything upside down. I found dust, cobwebs, tax returns from 2014, but nothing electronic. Nothing wired. No other obvious cameras. I even checked behind picture frames like I was living in some budget spy thriller. But nothing. And still, that unease itched beneath my skin. I barely slept. The next morning, I dragged myself into the kitchen, tried to make toast, and ended up just staring at the toaster. Her favorite mug was still in the dish rack. The one that said, "Rise and slay." She used to joke it was ironic because she never woke up before 9. I picked it up, intending to throw it against the wall. I didn't. I couldn't. I hated that about myself. Even after all this, I couldn't bring myself to destroy her things. I just set it back down and hated how gently I did it. I decided to try something new. I logged into the old neighborhood app, the one with the community watch group. I hadn't touched it in years, but maybe someone had seen something. A strange car. Unfamiliar faces. I posted a vague message, asking if anyone had noticed odd activity around our house in the past few months. 30 minutes later, I got a private message. The username was anonymous, just looking 2025. Their message was short. Check your attic again. Look behind the vent. I froze. The attic? Again? I'd already turned it upside down. But the specificity of the message, it felt like someone was watching me. Not just Brenna. Me. I didn't want to go back up there. Every inch of that crawl space reeked of secrets and insulation and old memories I didn't ask to uncover. But I had to. I needed to know how deep this went. This time, I brought a screwdriver and a flashlight. I climbed up, heart racing, sweat pooling at my neck despite the chill. I found the vent the message had mentioned, A small metal grate near the corner, nearly invisible beneath a layer of dust. I unscrewed it slowly, every turn of the metal feeling like I was opening a tomb. Behind it? A black pouch, hidden behind the slats. Inside the pouch, another USB stick, a burner phone, and a typed note. The note was printed, no handwriting, no names. It read, "You think she betrayed you? She did. But not just with him. She lied to him too. Keep digging." My hands trembled. I stared at the burner phone. It had one contact stored under the name M. I hesitated. I should have just turned it in, called the police. But instead, like the broken mess I'd become, I clicked on the messages. There were dozens, mostly short texts, and none from Brenna. They were all from him. Whoever he was, he had been tracking her too. The texts weren't romantic. They weren't angry either. They were clinical. "She's lying about Thursday. Check her call log from the 14th. You're not the only one she manipulated." I suddenly realized something bone deep. This wasn't just an affair. This was something else entirely. This was layers. Surveillance. Mistrust. Someone else had been burned by her, maybe worse than me. And now he was feeding me information like I was his backup player in some invisible war. I didn't want to be part of any of it. I just wanted my life back. My silence. My mediocrity. My boring mornings with toast and her sarcastic comments about my mismatched socks. But there was no going back now. I stared at the last text message. The one that hadn't been opened yet. "If you want to know everything, meet me. Tonight. 9 p.m. Parking lot behind the old hardware store. Come alone." She said I never help, so I helped her disappear. It was raining by the time I pulled into the parking lot. One of those slow, cold drizzles that feels like it's trying to wear you down one drop at a time. The kind of weather that makes parking lots look like graveyards. I turned off the ignition and waited, engine ticking, fingers drumming against the steering wheel while the wipers thumped a slow heartbeat against the windshield. It was just after 8:45 p.m. The old hardware store hadn't been open in years, the paint had peeled off the bricks, and a faded, going out of business banner still clung stubbornly to the rusted awning. The place looked like something out of a forgotten movie. Fitting, I guess. So did I. For 15 minutes, no one came. I started to think I'd been played. That this was just another head game, maybe even Brenna herself, pulling strings from some hotel suite with a smirking accomplice. But then a single set of headlights appeared at the far end of the lot. No drama. No speeding. Just a plain black sedan, unremarkable, creeping forward like it was reluctant to be here. The car stopped about 20 feet from mine. The driver didn't get out. Neither did I. We sat like that, engines off, two silhouettes staring through rain-slicked glass, until the passenger door of the sedan opened and a man stepped out, slowly, cautiously, as if even he wasn't entirely sure this was the right play. He looked average, maybe mid-30s. Tall, plain hoodie, jeans, nondescript face you'd forget in a crowd, except for his eyes. There was something raw about them. Wired. Like he hadn't slept in weeks and didn't trust anything that moved. He approached my window and tapped once. I rolled it down halfway, just enough to hear. "You're M?" I asked. He nodded but didn't smile. "You're Kyle." It wasn't a question. He already knew. "I almost didn't come," I muttered. He leaned closer. "I almost didn't ask. But we're the only ones left, and you needed to know. She played both of us." I opened the door slowly, stepping out into the drizzle. We stood there face to face, two strangers tethered by the same woman and an invisible thread of confusion, rage, and shame. I asked him the first question that mattered. "Who are you to her?" He exhaled like he'd been holding the answer in too long. "I thought I was her future." Then, without asking, he handed me a flash drive. No preamble, no explanation. I stared at it. "What's on this?" "Proof," he said. "But not the kind you think." I slid it into my coat pocket. "You installed the cameras?" He nodded again. I was drifting away like he couldn't bear to look at me anymore. "She thought I didn't know about you. She said you were an old college roommate who never moved out. Said you weren't intimate anymore. That you were like a brother she pitted." I felt a punch in my gut. She told him that? "She told me," he went on, voice tightening, "that you were broken. Depressed. A shell. She said she stayed with you because she couldn't leave a man on the edge." I nearly laughed. I had been depressed. I was a shell. But she never once made me feel like she saw it. She never acknowledged it. She just let me drown in it quietly, then turned my pain into a justification for cheating. "She said she loved me," he added. "Said she'd leave you once I proved I was serious. So I did. I left my fiancé. I moved cities. I signed a lease. Let me guess, I said bitterly. She ghosted you right after? 3 weeks ago, he confirmed. Last text she sent me was, "Don't contact me again. It's over." We stood there for a long moment, the sound of rain thick between us. I felt no comfort in the shared betrayal. If anything, it made everything more grotesque. She hadn't just broken me, she'd destroyed him too. And she'd done it effortlessly, like swapping outfits. She'd built entire separate realities and exited them without flinching. I found something, I said quietly. She was collecting clips. Videos of me, edited once. Like she was building a case. He didn't look surprised. She did that with me too. Emails. Texts. She took screenshots out of context. Made it look like I was manipulative. She called me unstable in a therapy session we went to once. Told the therapist I scared her. That was the day I knew she'd never pick me. Not really. I asked him the question I hadn't dared say out loud. Was this all part of something bigger? Like blackmail? A con? What was she doing? He shook his head slowly. No, she didn't do it for money. She did it for control. Power. She needed to feel smarter. Needed to prove we were weaker. That she could rewrite the narrative. She didn't want love, she wanted leverage. And we handed it to her. We exchanged numbers. Not because we planned to talk again, but because some unspoken part of us knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Before he left, he said one more thing. She has a storage unit. She used to mention it when she thought I wasn't listening. It's under a fake name. You find that. You'll get the whole picture. Then he drove away, headlights vanishing into the night. I got back into my car, soaking wet, trembling. When I got home, I dried off, poured a glass of whiskey I didn't want, and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. What I saw first made me gasp. Because it wasn't a video of Brenna. It was a video of me, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding my head, whispering something I didn't remember saying. Then I heard her voice. Off camera. Calm. Instructing me. Tell me again how you feel like you don't deserve love. My mouth moved in the video, and I repeated it. Exactly as she said. She said I never help. So I helped her disappear. I watched that video a dozen times. My face, hollow and worn, stared back at me as I sat on the edge of our bed in my own house, repeating her words like a puppet. I feel like I don't deserve love. The way I said it, the vacancy in my voice, it didn't even sound like me. I looked drugged, tranced, but I knew I hadn't been. I hadn't taken anything. That night was months ago, and yet I remembered none of it. Just fog. I remembered arguing about something stupid, bills or dishes, or how she always locked the bedroom door when she got ready. But not this. Not her standing behind the camera coaxing out confessions from me like she was filming a documentary about a man's slow emotional collapse. The file was timestamped 2:43 a.m. That matched the time I used to wake up gasping during those months when everything in me felt wrong, but I couldn't explain why. I thought I was having panic attacks. Turns out I was being recorded. There were more clips. Dozens of them. Each file name was emotionless, just date and time. Some were barely a few seconds. Others were long. 10 minutes. 20. I clicked through them one by one. Me crying quietly while she rubbed my back and whispered questions like, "Why do you think everyone leaves you?" Or "What would you do if I disappeared?" I kept answering, always as if I owed her the answers. Like I was confessing things just to keep her near. But it wasn't support. It wasn't care. It was harvesting. She was collecting moments. My worst, most unguarded states. Edited, logged, categorized. I began to feel like an exhibit in a psychological experiment I never agreed to participate in. I stayed up until sunrise combing through the flash drive. Some clips even had little audio notes attached. Hers. Cold, detached observations of my behavior, like a scientist logging her subject. Severe guilt reflex when challenged. Avoidant, possibly depressive. Easily destabilized with low-level confrontation. Responds with shutdown. There it was, in her voice, her cadence. Not the woman I loved, but someone else entirely. Someone who had been analyzing me like I was a project she was finishing before a deadline. I sat there, numb, as it finally sank in. I wasn't married to a partner. I was married to someone who treated my vulnerability as data. By noon, I hadn't eaten. I hadn't moved from the desk. I couldn't. Because in one of the last folders, simply labeled "Do Not Delete," I found something worse than all the footage combined. A contract. An unsigned rental agreement for an apartment 2 towns over, in her name and in my name. Not forged. Legitimate. But I never saw it. Never agreed to it. And there, attached to the file, was a draft email to a local therapist saying we'd be attending couples counseling due to emotional volatility, history of depressive behavior, and fear of abandonment. The language made me sound unstable, dangerous, unfit, and in the metadata, I saw it was written months ago, well before she ever left. She was preparing to make me look like the problem, not just in private, not just to her affair partner, but legally, publicly. I don't know what her end game was, but it was bigger than an affair. This was positioning. She was building a paper trail that made me the fragile one, the broken one, the husband she tried to help, who was just too far gone. I could see it all now, a staged exit where she walked away with sympathy, maybe even praise, while I disappeared quietly into the damaged man role she'd written for me. But she left something out. She underestimated how much I was willing to uncover. So I went looking for the storage unit. It took the rest of the day and every shred of mental strength I had left. I combed through old financial apps, her digital receipts, even her workout tracker. Eventually, I found it. A small self-storage facility just outside town, billed under the name Kendra Miles, an alias I recognized from one of her burner email accounts I'd come across months earlier when I thought she was just signing up for fitness classes without telling me. I didn't think much of it then. I do now. I drove there just after sunset. The place was nearly empty. Rows of orange metal doors lined the gravel lot. It smelled like oil and mildew and cheap concrete. I walked into the office and gave the alias. The clerk barely looked up. Unit 114. It's prepaid through November. I asked if I could go in. He slid the clipboard across the desk. You're on the access list. Of course I was. She'd made sure of that. I signed and took the key. My hands shook as I stepped toward the unit. The lock clicked open with a snap that echoed down the rows. Inside was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling and a handful of boxes stacked neatly along the back wall. I opened the first box. Inside were more recordings, printed transcripts, CD-ROMs, photos of me. One was from my high school yearbook. Another was from a party I don't even remember attending. One was a picture of me in the grocery store, clearly taken without my knowledge. All before we met. I shuffled through them, heart pounding. She'd known about me long before we ever met. And then I saw it. A manila folder labeled Phase 2. Inside was her handwriting. Pages of notes. Bullet points. And the very last line read, once he breaks, initiate closure. Pivot sympathy. She wasn't improvising. She was following a plan. And I was just getting to the end of it. I sat in the middle of that freezing storage unit for over an hour, surrounded by fragments of a life that, in hindsight, never actually belonged to me. My marriage wasn't just broken, it had been scripted. Brenna had orchestrated everything, not as a reaction to anything I did, but as a blueprint she had likely begun drafting before I even asked her to move in. The notes in the Phase 2 folder were clinical, cold, and detailed enough to give any therapist pause. She'd written about emotional distillation, about isolating patterns, about how I could be pushed into self-doubt without overt aggression. And then she wrote, once compliant, proceed with detachment, no need for confrontation. I wasn't a person to her. I was a concept she'd proven. And now I was the only one left holding the evidence. The worst part? She'd succeeded. I had doubted myself. I had believed I was the problem. For months, maybe years, I thought I was unworthy. Too tired. Too withdrawn. I thought maybe if I had been more something, she would have stayed. I thought maybe the silence at the dinner table was my fault. Maybe my small talk wasn't interesting enough. Maybe my clothes, my habits, my existence were just inherently forgettable. But now I realized none of that mattered. I was never meant to be loved, only studied. On my way out of the unit, I saw one last box labeled discards. Inside it were items I hadn't seen in years. Old cards I'd written, gifts I'd given, even a little wooden music box I made her one Christmas. She had saved them, not because she cherished them, but because they were props. Set pieces from a play she was already rewriting behind the curtain. A narrative where I was the emotionally unfit husband, and she was the quietly suffering saint who finally found the courage to leave. As I locked up the unit, the weight of it all finally pressed me to the ground. I knelt in the gravel like my legs gave out. My entire identity, husband, provider, partner, felt like a costume that someone had quietly stripped off of me while I was sleeping. And then something strange happened. My phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. No number. No caller ID. Just a 12-second recording. I hit play. There was silence for a moment. Then Brenna's voice. Calm. Measured. Tired. If you found the storage unit, then you know. I didn't hate you. I needed something you didn't know you were giving. That's not cruelty, Kyle. That's design. Please don't come looking for me. The message ended. Just like that. No explanation. No regret. No apology. I stood up, shaking, staring out at the empty road ahead. I should have felt rage. I should have called the police. I should have driven until I found her and demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I drove home in silence, my thoughts a mess of overlapping realizations and shattered assumptions. And somewhere between the mile markers and exit signs, I finally admitted it to myself. I had been living in her story, not mine. And maybe it was time to change the ending. That night, I boxed up everything. The letters, the videos, the photos, the burner phone, the flash drives. All of it. I labeled the box Truth in bold marker and placed it in the hall closet where she used to keep spare linens. Then I sat down and opened my laptop. Not to email her, not to message him, but to write down everything. The whole story. Every manipulated moment. Every violated boundary. I started typing, not for revenge, not for pity, but because for the first time in years, I was speaking without her script in my mouth. Then, just as I was about to close the laptop, I got a notification. A shared calendar alert. Something had been added. By her. One single word. Closure. Scheduled for next Tuesday, 6 p.m. A location was attached, a remote, public bench by the walking trail on the outskirts of town. The place we went once years ago when she told me she almost fell in love with me that day. I stared at it for a long time. She hadn't blocked me. She hadn't disappeared entirely. She wanted me to come. Or maybe she wanted me to see that she was finishing the story the way she wanted. But here's the thing. I wasn't the same man anymore. And if she wanted closure, she was finally going to hear what I had to say. The day of the meeting came faster than I expected. It's funny how time accelerates when you're counting down to something you both dread and need. I didn't rehearse what I'd say. I didn't draft a speech or read through old messages for effect. I just sat with myself for a few days, quietly untangling what was mine and what was hers. The guilt, the shame, the narrative she wrote. I realized I'd carried it for too long like it was a burden I deserved. But it wasn't mine to hold. I arrived at the trail a few minutes early. The weather was perfect. The sun was low, casting golden rays across the gravel path. The air was still, heavy with late spring pollen and silence. There were birds overhead. A couple joggers. A kid chasing his dog near the trees. It felt almost unfair that the world could be so peaceful while I was preparing for a conversation that might reopen every wound she left behind. She showed up exactly on time, as always, punctual, controlled, polished in her appearance. Hair perfect, expression unreadable. She sat down on the other end of the bench without a word. For a while, we just sat in silence. I think we both expected the other to speak first, but I didn't rush. I wasn't the same Kyle she remembered, the one who apologized for things he didn't do, who softened the truth to keep her from leaving. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. I thought you'd be angry. I turned to look at her and shrugged. I was. She nodded. You found everything? I nodded back. Yes. Another pause. Then she said the thing that truly baffled me. I'm sorry if it hurt you. If. She looked away. You were strong. You always were. You just didn't realize it. I let that sit for a moment. The version of her sitting beside me now wasn't the mastermind from the storage unit files. She wasn't the woman behind the camera asking me to question my worth. She was just tired. She looked almost smaller than I remembered, like the weight of keeping all the masks in place had finally caught up to her. I'm not here to get revenge, I said. I'm not here to scream or ask why. I already know why. She tensed slightly. Do you? You needed control. I made it easy. I let you direct the story. For years. I thought if I kept the peace, I'd keep you. But peace isn't love. It's silence. And I stayed silent long enough. She turned to face me fully now, eyes glistening. I did care about you. That wasn't fake. I know, I said, gently. But you cared in the only way you knew how, from a distance. Like observing something break under pressure. I didn't want to destroy you, she whispered. But you did, I said. And then I rebuilt myself. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, like she couldn't deny it. So, what now? I smiled for the first time in a long time, a smile that came from something real. Nothing. This is it. I just wanted you to hear me say that I'm not yours anymore. Not your version of me. Not your story. I walked away from all of it. And I'm not looking back. She didn't respond right away. But I saw it in her face, the shock, maybe even the regret, of someone who finally realized they underestimated the quiet ones. The people they thought would stay broken. I stood up and brushed the gravel from my palms. She didn't move. She just sat there, watching me, probably expecting me to hesitate. But I didn't. I walked away from the bench, from the narrative she built, from the man I used to be. I walked back into my life, when I would build from scratch. No edits. No hidden cameras. Just truth. In the weeks that followed, I donated the box labeled Truth. I deleted the files. I stopped checking for anonymous messages. I closed the loop. And then, slowly, I started to live again. I found a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I finally knew I deserved better than silence. I reconnected with my brother. I even adopted a dog, one that barks too much and sheds like crazy but greets me like I matter every single day. And one morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a shell. I saw someone who had survived being rewritten and learned how to hold the pen himself. So no, this story doesn't end in rage, or scandal, or revenge. It ends with me. Finally, me.